So there is an iconic scene in the film between Judah and Jack when Judah's just wondering, okay, what am I supposed to do about my mistress? She's not listening to reason. He calls up his underworld brother, who's involved in all kinds of nefarious activities. He is confiding in him because he wants some kind of response, right? He's fishing for some kind of comment that he could sort of say, you know what, I didn't put this thought into my own mind, right? It was my brother Jack, my no good, murderous, thieving, whatever, black sheep of the family brother that I always come to for favors, and he's putting this idea in my head, the germs of murder into my head, and I didn't have anything to do with this. Hi, everyone. Welcome to ArtiFact number 73. We're going to be discussing the classic 1989 Woody Allen film, Crimes and Misdemeanors. And before I even introduce us, I want to jump right into the final speech that Martin Landau's character, Judah, makes in the movie and what we think about his conception of murder, guilt, the strains of Dostoyevsky, anti-Dostoyevsky that has been sort of picked apart in the last few decades, and our responses to what Woody Allen is doing himself with the script and with some of these ideas.
And after the awful deed is done, he finds that he's plagued by deep-rooted guilt. Little sparks of his religious background, which he'd rejected, are suddenly stirred up. He hears his father's voice. He imagines that God is watching his every move. Suddenly, it's not an empty universe at all, but a just and moral one, and he's violated it. And then, one morning, he awakens, and the sun is shining, and his family is around him. Mysteriously, the crisis is lifted. Takes his family on a vacation to Europe, and as the months pass, he finds he's not punished. In fact, he prospers.
To me, this is one of the best parts of the movie because it's very unexpected for different reasons. The first part of it is the last time that we see Judah before this final speech where he's coming to terms with his life and his misdeeds. He seems to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown. He's ever escalating in his behavior. He's threatening to perhaps turn his brother in for murder since he's part of this hitman operation. And we think this is going to be what happens, right? The classic Dostoyevsky ending of guilt sort of winning out, people coming to terms with it only through punishment. But the exact opposite happens, right? He does not turn himself in. He is no longer feeling too guilty after some unspecified amount of time. And it's very grating because just in previous scenes, the last time we see him, he's seems to be becoming an alcoholic. He's slamming tables. He's yelling. He's really out of his mind in some respects. And now it's the exact opposite, right? So to me, not only is there this rich philosophical import, it also speaks to great writing. It's not predictable. We don't know exactly that this is going to be what happens. In fact, it's the opposite. So what do you guys think about that tactic that Woody Allen uses and any responses to the scene in general?
Yeah, I thought of the ending of Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, which the title does allude to, and how weak that ending is, how predictable, and also fits too much within the whole morality framework as opposed to the movie points to reality and how that is like. Yeah, how he breaks out of that constraint, this prison. I think he called it at one point that it's worse, that it's even worse than a prison.
Well, how about this, Ruslan? Do you think that it is a realistic appraisal of how something like murder might work when it comes to somebody that is otherwise in this high society? He's never been in this kind of underground world of murder and murderers. He likes to keep his hands clean. How realistic do you think it is that this is ultimately what happens, Ruslan?
Well, for a normal human being, this would not be normal because they would feel that murdering somebody is wrong. But Judah is this good portrait of a psychopath. He only thinks of himself, and then that is very really realistic. That he sort of just goes through the guilt, and then he just wakes up one day to find that, oh, it's God. It might return for like a brief period, but I can weather this easily.
Yeah, like I agree with Ruslan. Like throughout the film, we see these implications that he has been involved with his brother Ben in all sorts of underhanded things. Like maybe he has not committed murder, but he's already a cheater at the point we are introduced to his character, and also the fact that he had been involved in these financial indiscretions, as well as the fact that he has been with his wife or his family with his wife we hear for 20 years, and yet he has not like revealed, most likely not revealed any of this to her, which I found really interesting, because he's also like been maintaining this image towards his family and kind of like keeping them in the dark. So like the fact that he is capable of this kind of deceit for so long also like hints to his scummy nature. And then there are lots of uh, hints about his overall character, like the small moments that we see throughout the film where he's not a likable person at all. Like there's this scene where kind of like he lashes out at his daughter because he's so frustrated, and it's an interesting scene because it gives us a almost sort of a glimpse into this killer, almost like really what happens in these thriller films is that we often see, like, we know who the killer is, but we do not get the but we are supposed to get the glimpse of them in their element or in some mid-violence moment. So for me, that was the equivalent of that moment where he suddenly lashes out at his daughter, and it's kind of like you see the glimpse of his true face, but also the fact that like when I think about his character overall, there is always this implication of a dark nature to him, because in the earlier scene when he's making that speech, like the sequence that opens the film, he's making that speech and we see behind him these bare branches against the darkness, and it's sort of like manifested, prefigured the kind of evil that he has inside him. So yes, so like overall the way his character trajectory is shown, of course he goes through these crises, and especially the way he handles these crises, which also tells a lot about the interiors of this person. Another thing that came to my mind when I was watching that, the contrast with the another woman, because she's also the main character in it, the Marion Post. She's also this accomplished individual, and her world is suddenly like sort of torn apart by this outside intrusion. And this is something that similarly happens with Judah. The world that he has created around himself is suddenly starting to fall apart. And the interesting thing is that one can see the how Marion deals with a crisis, which is like the genuine way of dealing with it, and how Judah sort of like bypasses the crisis and takes the other way around. So from that, you can sort of imagine why would he reach that stage.
Yeah, to me, there's realism for a number of reasons, and perhaps the biggest one is, generally speaking, people are okay with death, carnage of all sorts, as long as they don't see it, as long as they're not truly involved in terms of pulling the trigger, right, pushing a button. We see this, for example, in somebody like Judah, because he is just kind of entitled after so many years, right? On the one hand, you see his childhood, which I don't know if I would call it idyllic, but he comes from a religious background. Even if he's not religious himself, he seems to really move up in the world fairly quickly. His brother, he has all kinds of struggles that get alluded to, but nonetheless, he himself also moves up in the world, a very different kind of world, but maybe not so different as it seems, because when you look at something like the global North versus the global South, the global North has drained trillions, if not hundreds of trillions of value from the South into the pockets of the North, right? Into the pockets of soft hands, parasitic hands, useless hands. We have, for example, Waqas Jani below here, who is from Pakistan, right? Just that country alone, right? When you think of the Indian subcontinent in general, millions of deaths, trillions of value taken from Britain. Back then, it wasn't pushing a button; it was signing a document and then just seeing how it all unfolds. That's a very realistic look, right? If you have sufficient layers of abstraction between you and this thing, you could get over it. Judah doesn't get over it so quickly because he's very close to it, right? He's the one that essentially orders his hit. Beneath all this, there is that human capacity for exactly what you see on the screen. And so by way of introduction, my name is Alex Sheremet. I am the world's foremost expert on the films of Woody Allen. I am also a director. My first film is From There to There, Bruce Ario, the Minneapolis poet. You could watch that on patreon.com/automachination, where you could get this full show plus the bonus show ad-free. We have Ruslan Gallopyn, who, like me, actually is from the former Soviet Union. We're both in the hinterlands of the Soviet Union. We're not centrally located like the Muscovites or the St. Petersburg scumbags. We are on the hinterlands. And he's now in Belgium. I'm now in New York City. And we have Waqas Jani, who was from not even a big city in Pakistan. He is in rural Pakistan right now. And what do you know? It's kind of fascinating that three men from different backgrounds living in different places now, they have found each other to discuss the films of Woody Allen. We did not grow up in shtetl culture. We did not grow up in WASP culture. And yet here we are. We're getting something from the films. And maybe we could talk about how this is also a very masculine movie, right? Maybe among the most masculine of Woody Allen films. So maybe it's a good little change of pace to have at least one movie where it's just we get the man's perspective over and over and over again. So let's just tackle this, I guess, from the beginning. Like, why Waqas? Like, why were you into Woody films? How did you get into them, and what a value do you really get out of them, despite the fact that he doesn't seem to be speaking to your upbringing, to your experiences, and yet in a very kind of deeper, more universal way, he is.
I think like this has to do with initially when I found about Cosmo, Vertica, and your stuff. The Woody Allen was always there, whether it was on the Dance website or whether it was on your own blog. So I just needed to find out about how the art works, how the film works. So since these Woody Allen films were so readily available with these various criticisms, so that's why I started watching them. But surprisingly, when I watched them, they were highly relatable in the ways they presented these various individuals and the kind of preoccupations and the kind of obsessions these people had, and it was very interesting to see, and it was also highly entertaining the way it was able to do that, especially through the lens of comedy, and how these highly unlikable people were made likable to us, or the fact that they had the same veneer of the Hollywood films that I'd grown up watching, especially romantic comedies. I had been a great fan of romantic comedies. They have been they've always sort of provided this skepticism to me as a kid. So this had this same veneer, but at the same time, these films were also doing something more deeper, something that had connection to the literature. So this was a great discovery to me, because it made me see beyond the surface of the things, despite the fact that these things have the very familiar veneer. I think any lay person who would watch a Woody Allen film would probably take them for what they are. Like, they would probably dismiss as a certain film on a romance or a comedy, or even just a film on relationships in general, when in fact there is so much going on. There's sort of this existential undercurrent to these characters, even as on the surface they come across as very, very, very the sort of the characters that you would see in other Hollywood films. Like, for instance, even if we will talk about this film, this film also has a very Hollywood-like plot, which involves a man who gets who cheats and who eventually murders and gets away with it. But at the same time, when you look at the way it's handled, the way the kind of we get these implications, there's always something more deeper going on. So yeah, it was because of all these deeper aspects, the way these various techniques were employed, and the way the narrative was handled, which was what made it very instrumental for me in able to understand how the art works on a deeper level.
And I should just add that Waqas actually is a film critic also with my literary magazine, automachination.com, where you could find his various works that also, interestingly enough, they focus on Indian films that are just kind of relationship-centered as well. And you could also find it's about 4,500 words, I guess, big essay on crimes and misdemeanors up right now. You could find that in the show notes. And Ruslan, how did you come across Woody Allen? Is Woody even like a fixture in Europe? Is that like something that happens, or did you just kind of come to him sort of independently?
Well, he is a fixture in Europe, especially in France. He is still beloved there. But I came to him as a teen through his more humoristic films, uh, and they are very funny. Like his humor does cross cultures, which is notoriously difficult. But even this film, Crimes and Misdemeanors, like it has a serious plot about adultery and murder and morals and ethics, and yet there's a very funny side to it. There's some very funny lines and scenes in it, and I came to him through these humorous films, and I started exploring his work a bit, but found it odd that most of his like serious films and his films from his golden age, the 80s, were not all that well received, which I found very strange because I thought, hey, here's a great film. What is up with people saying that it's not good? And that's how I found your articles on Woody, uh, like an excellent, solid appraisal of his films instead of just like a gut feeling for like, we don't like this, blah, blah, blah. I grew up with these films. I kept rewatching them as I got older. And I think I basically fell into all the traps that like young men would fall into when they start watching the relationship focused films, thinking Albie Singer is like, oh, I want to imitate his zingers and whatnot. And then as you get older and then a relationship breaks apart or whatever, and you're growing up, you're confronting the real world and then realizing like, like the perspective that the director has, the storyteller is actually more mature, and he subtly or less subtly criticizes those traps that you as a young person would fall in. So I don't only like admire him artistically; it's something I grew up with his films. I grew through his films. Yeah.
And I would say the same exact thing for myself, right? I didn't quite ever really look up to some of these characters that Woody Allen plays as I was growing up, because I only really started watching his films that much in my 20s. And despite his personal deficiencies in real life, the fact is, I do credit Woody with giving me a lot of clarity about how adults behave. I remember like watching some of the stuff and thinking like, damn, these are, people in their 30s and 40s. And now that I'm the same age, it's like I can get a pretty good glimpse into how all that works and all the pitfalls. And again, I've said this before, but I absolutely do not regret doing my book on Woody Allen. I don't regret spending time with the films, because the fact is, like, it definitely had an influence on my art as well as my understanding on a whole lot of stuff. And this is irrespective of the fact of whether or not an artist takes his or her own advice, right? It is irrelevant. Maybe we could like jump into the structure of the film, right? So obviously it's a comedy drama, and it's among the darkest of the comedy dramas of Woody, and but neither part is less important, right? You have the comedic side that mostly takes place through the eyes of the Woody Allen character Clifford, right, who is a film director slash producer or editor that has fallen on some hard times, and the comedic element, it's to me, like when I think of Crimes and Misdemeanors as a title, the misdemeanors tend to be on that side, right? They tend to be on the Woody side of things and his sort of personal dilemmas with relationships and trying to make his way in the world as an artist, and the ways that he's wronged or apparently seems to be wronged, right? We're going to get into some of those kinds of specifics as to whether or not he's truly being wronged by some of the characters around him. And the crime side, of course, much bigger and deeper, right? We're dealing with murder, and how the two just kind of intersect and overlap, because in some level you could theoretically do all kinds of high crimes in relation to art, right? Which we're going to talk about. So the comedy and the drama here are very much linked. They're, two sides of the same coin. It's one of the most expert uses of such by Woody Allen in any of his movies. And I mean, there's plenty in the 80s, right? So this is 1989. Like in my mind, Woody Allen occupies, when it comes to like what are the top 10 movies of the 80s period, Woody probably has like 4 or 5. He has Another Woman, he has Crimes and Misdemeanors, he has Hannah and Her Sisters, he has Radio Days, and he has, of course, Stardust Memories, which is 1980. So that structure, I think, works very well because it's never allowed to get too super heavy without some kind of offset happening soon after, right? So and it's also a little bit long, right? It's an hour 45, which is longer than many of his films. But one thing I noticed the last time watching it is the opening credits, they feel pretty long. They're over a minute long against a black screen, which is a little bit longer than typical for Woody. But including that, by the time you hit the 5-minute mark, so much has happened. You have Judah, he's already being celebrated for his philanthropy and his whatever. He gives his speech. He has this like very poetic appraisal of the eyes of God are always upon you, right? Going back to comments his father would make in childhood. And then you have him sort of come home. He finds this letter from his mistress and he burns it, right, in his fireplace. And he reads it too, right? So you get exactly what's going on. So within 5 minutes, you go from credits to the burning of the letter, and so much has transpired. There's a ton of density to this film, despite the fact that it's hour 45. Just by the way, like Hannah and Her Sisters, also a little bit longer, maybe even longer than this, and yet super dense in every single shot. Maybe we could sort of like start with that image at the beginning, right? The eyes of God are always upon you, and what we feel about the sentiment. Because on the one hand, it's a bit naive, right? And the film plays with the naivete of this belief that God is always watching you, and there's going to be justice carried out, and so on and so forth, right? We know, having lived long enough in this world, that's not necessarily the case. But to me, I think you could view it a different way anyway, because even though I don't believe in God, it's almost as if God exists regardless, right? Because whether or not it's God's eyes, there is some sort of objective observer. Whether or not this objective observer is even alive, there is an objective observer always on the outside looking in that is able to adjudicate everything that's happening, cosmically as well as within the planet in your life. I think it's best to live your life as if you're being watched nonstop, because in some way, whether or not it technically happens, everything is on record in the end. And it breaks from Ben's, the Sam Waterston character, it breaks from his more naive approach without actually losing, I think, some of that idealism. So what do you guys think about that statement? The eyes of God are always upon you.
Okay, so like I always took that statement as something that belonged to the character of the Judah, like something that has stayed with him from the childhood, and he's like there is still, it's somewhere inside him, the way he's able to talk about it, but he's now talking about it indifferently before these crashes happen to him. So there is that. And also the fact that of course this film also has sort of like this the eyes of God is watching you. So this film kind of like establishes this expectation on the part of the viewer. Okay, so whatever this character is going to do, there's going to be some sort of a comeuppance for him, like he's going like there is this idea of punishment and everything. So it basically uses this as this foil against what the characters are doing and then inverts them. So this was my take on it.
I see a bit in it that he says he's not religious, that there's only sparks of religion in him, but he did use that to his advantage, that the eyes of God. He's a social climber. The eyes of God is to him his milieu, his status, and how to play that game to get up, to like be upwardly mobile there, in the way that when he's confronted with his guilt, he can easily like snap to his persona, the one that is watched by the eyes of God, fairly easily. Whether it's he's been like not interrogated but asked questions by the police, or such scenes. That's how I saw a bit of it.
And he seems super confident. Like I remember right after the assassination takes place, he says like, I think I've done something terrible. And that to me is like a couple of things it rolled into one. Number one, yeah, he is, feeling guilty on some level. Obviously, he's shocked at what happened, but that very quickly melds into, oh shit, there's a bunch of incriminating evidence in her apartment that I need to go get. And when he's making his way to the car, right, to like drive to this Manhattan apartment, obviously his wife is trying to stop him. He's like, what are you talking about? We're at a dinner party. His friends are trying to stop him, but he doesn't even argue with them. He just explains like, hey, I have all this stuff. I'm sorry. It was great seeing you today. I'll see you later. And he just does not entertain, even for a second, that anyone's going to stop him, that anyone's going to argue with him. He essentially treats everybody, as more or less like children. Or like, I'm not even going to explain myself. I'm just going to do what I do. And it's super confident, right? And this is exactly the kind of thing that you would expect from a certain kind of personality, a certain kind of killer. And also another great irony of this whole thing about the eyes of God always watching you isn't the fact that, look, in the film he gets away with it, right? He gets to live his life, but we are sitting here and we're adjudicating his life. Everybody that has seen this movie since 1989, they have an opinion on it. Dan Schneider, in his review of Crimes and Misdemeanors, calls him, kind of like maybe the most realistic kind of killer that he has ever seen in film before. And we've been doing this now for a long time, right? The film has been out for decades at this point. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody views him as this kind of de facto evil figure, even if probably amoral is a bit closer to the mark than purely evil. And yeah, I mean, we're doing this, right? And it tends to be this way. Even those that get away with things in their lifetimes, there is a kind of social accountability, even if it's not punishment, but mere laughter, contempt, using you as an example. I mean, this character is nothing more at this point other than an example of the pitfalls of society, the pitfalls of psychology, self-deceit, all of those kinds of things. So that to me is another irony of the film.
Also, the scene you mentioned, like when Dolores gets murdered, and we do not see her getting murdered. The scene cuts to this gathering that they are sitting in. I think one thing that also stood out to me in that scene is that like that fireplace. Earlier we see that Judah burns later in that fireplace, right? So it's just that we see this brief interaction between that fireplace and the Judah's wife Miriam, which was interesting to me because Miriam is someone that Dolores is already always trying to reach out. So this interaction in and of itself like reminded me of all these tropes in the films where what happens is there's on one side there is this person who's something bad is happening to them, and on the other side there's a rescuer or a hero who sort of like is supposed to like rescue them. I'm not saying that Miriam is a rescuer in this case. It's just that she could have been that potential mediator who could have like turned things around for better or worse. So I think it's such a great touch the way she's like adding this wood to the fireplace, and then she like checks her arms or something, which kind of like creates this connection. And also this there's this great touch of the way Judah is sitting there among these people, and we see the sound of the wood burning, and the wood burns on, and the sound kind of like shows you like something bad is happening, like how these all characters are involved in this in some way. So yeah, those were some of the things that stood out to me from that scene.
Maybe we should return to the Judah character in a little bit because there's more to say, especially with his interactions with his brother. But what about the Woody Allen character Clifford? When it comes to Manhattan, obviously when he opens up that film and the Isaac character is just kind of sitting around writing this, what seems to be a pretty shitty novel. I think some viewers will get the sense that, yeah, that's bad writing. He doesn't seem to be a very good artist. And I guess that's another irony of that film. But here, I feel like he's a more benign character. Like he's not bad in the way that Isaac is bad. He doesn't do like bad things to anybody. He seems to at least have his heart in the right place. He's trying to do something constructive with his life. Like he's trying to make this film with this philosopher. He's trying to shoot the Lester character, right, Alan Alda, in a way that captures the fact that he's not a good guy. He's a blowhard. He doesn't really have anything worthwhile to say. He uses other people, right? He sexually exploits some of his employees and whatnot.
What are you doing to me? This is supposed to be the profile of the creative mind.
It's very tough for a woman in this profession. I mean, men are always hitting them. I can make it easier for you, you know?
What is this? What is this? When did you shoot that? When did you get that?
But
I was lurking around the corner. I had my camera and I couldn't resist. I saw you guys.
I mean, I don't want to do it in a kind of a vulgar way and just, take it off what I see here. I want to find out what's in here, so I gotta, spend some time where we have a little dinner together and, just to sit around.
Okay, you can step aside. I'm taking over this film.
What are you talking about? You can't finish my film.
I can't read your contract.
So his heart is in the right place, and yet he still can't, at least to me, he can't break out of this mold of a typical Woody Allen character of, I want to be an artist, but I actually don't really have a whole lot of talent. And really, in this case, many people might even not really think anything of the fact that whether or not he has talent. But you see like little examples of, for example, when he does end up editing this Lester film, and he seems genuinely shocked that Lester doesn't want to play it. And that calls into question his intellect, but also just artistically speaking, it's kind of like, it's mildly amusing to see, I don't know, like Mussolini giving a speech, put next to Lester just pontificating on something, but it's more of a kind of like a YouTube video than an actual film, right? Yeah. It doesn't strike me as a documentary. Yeah. And before that, he used to edit newsreels and stuff like that. He wanted to quit that because it didn't feel like actual artistic expression. Now he gets to do this artistic expression, but he doesn't seem to be all that different from Lester. He's not bad in the way that Lester is, but they're similar in the sense that neither of them are actually good artists, and there's still this kind of deceit and delusion, right? Lester thinks he's this big, great guy who, because he's rich and famous, therefore he is deserving in some way. And with the Woody Allen character, it's a kind of Nietzschean slave morality, right? Because the fact that he's not rich and famous, that and only that is evidence of his strength and his talent, when the only thing obviously that is evidence of anything is the work itself, and the work that we see doesn't seem to be all that good. So what do you guys think of this Clifford character here, this iteration of the Woody Allen type?
I think I have like a bit more negative perception of him, or negative take on him, because the way his character is introduced, he's sitting with his niece and he's watching these films, and it shows in his face like he loves this stuff, the stuff he's watching, and that's completely fine with it. Like he likes these somewhat melodramatic films, but in the next scene we sort of like see him complaining with his wife that the Lester makes these documentaries which are like makes these shows which are pretty lowest common denominator, and he's making these serious documentaries. So it kind of like rings as sort of a hypocritical on his part, and also the fact that he's also not very realistic. Like he's a bit delusional in the sense that he's not like doing any job, he's unemployed, and he's given this employment opportunity by the Lester, and yet he does not behave professionally, and he just does all kind of weird stuff. Like he cuts back on the work and go watch his movies, and there's quite a bit of influence of movies on him, in the sense that to the point that he applies this in the real life, the way he talks about them. Because like earlier in the scene when he comes out of the movie theater, from the movie theater with his niece, he sort of like says that, look, there's this old lady, we can like kick the clutch or something and catch the taxi, and they sort of run together. It's almost like to me that was sort of like some sort of a kids adventure movie scene, the way he tries to create this. And also the fact that when he gets out of the theater, he says to her niece, listen, I had promised to your father on his deathbed that I'm going to give you these life lessons, but instead of giving these life lessons, he's like taking these movies, and the life lessons he gives is he just tells her some random shit or something, in order, like he's saying to her like, okay, this is the life lesson, which is something that he does, something that is very impromptu, something that is not planned at all. Like he says, oh, I will take to the museum someday, but let's watch movies today, like something like that. So he's not actually giving her any education. It's just that he is like killing his time and using her in the process. That, and also the fact that one of the things that I also find a bit creepy on his side, like I'm not sure like whether this is something that is common in the America, but the way he kind of like make these advances on the character of Hailey, like they're sitting together and he's sort of like touching her in the various ways, and he just keeps telling her that, oh no, oh, you need to keep away from the Lester because he won't be take his hands off you.
Yeah, she's here. How'd you know? Yeah, hold on 1 second. It's Lester.
Hello? Yeah? Sure, if you want me to. Okay, at the office at what time? 9?
9
okay,
o'clock?
That's
the building's
no problem.
dark. The floor is dark. There's nobody at the office.
I didn't hear that.
The office is closed.
No, I won't forget the
dark
outline.
room with Lester.
Yeah, the office is kind of a spooky place at 9 o'clock.
Definitely.
Sure, the hotel's even nearer. That's better
Don't go
for
to
me.
the hotel.
What was that? Okay, room 1911. Sure. Okay, I'll see you there. Okay.
You're not going to go to the hotel with him?
Sure.
That's crazy.
What's the matter with
I'm
you?
going to
Don't
go
be
with
so-
you.
Oh, come on, don't be ridiculous.
This guy, I know this guy. He won't be able to take his hands off you. Get you in the room, you know, and he'll read you your Miranda rights and he'll tear your clothes off.
He's interested in producing something of mine.
Your first child.
Oh, listen, I've never been seduced by a guy who wears loafers and no socks, much less one who says nuclear.
And he also says foliage.
This idea that the only thing that he has got going for himself is that he has got this intellectual guy, this person who is sort of like his way to validate his sort of seriousness with his life. And it's interesting because the way one gets the sense from his ways, the way he's delusional and very unrealistic, is that he's using this guy as a way to woo Hailey, sort of like impress her, because he says, look at her, he has no limbos, no bimbos. And it's something like that. He's indirectly saying that I am also like him, the way I'm liking him. But he's not like extrapolating this into something bigger, because Hailey tells him at some point, listen, I will fund this and we can make this, because she seems genuinely interested. And yet, at least in the film, we don't see him making anything about it. And also the fact that when he commits suicide, this Lester, the Professor Levy, and we see that Hailey comes to him, like she comes to him from this genuine concern, and even that he sort of ruins this moment and sort of like makes an advance on her, like this is an intellectual who he keeps talking about throughout the film, and yet he cannot even respect him in that moment, and he just sort of like reaches out to this woman that she's trying to get close to. So
well, to give like a little bit of credit to him, I mean, he seems to be in a pretty fucked up marriage. There seems to be a pretty deep contrast, at least on the surface, between Hailey and his wife. I could understand sort of like why he's acting out. To me, he seems like mostly benign and mostly harmless, unlike, you know, some of these other Woody characters. And also, you know, like very often the Woody type is said to be a coward in some way, and I don't find that generally to be the case. Like, for example, Albie Singer and Annie Hall, he takes what he wants. Isaac Davis in Manhattan, he just takes what he wants. Harry in Deconstructing Harry, he just takes what he wants, and they don't always get what they want, and they're not able to hold on to what they want, but at the same time he takes, and this guy, he could sort of make the attempt, but he often fails. So that's another element to it. Like, this is this to me is the prototypical cowardly Woody Allen type. Ruslan, so what do you think about this specific iteration of the Woody Allen tramp character?
Well, I would side more with Waqas, as I don't think he's that benign, but he uses like benign signifiers. As a documentary maker, his subjects are all like starving children or cancer, or like the prototypical high-minded look at how like the issue documentarian. That's what he is. And he uses like his self-delusion to lord a sort of superiority over other people slightly, but he gets rebuked every time because he basically wants the same things as Lester. But I remember in the double date scene where he's where Mia Farrow's character talks about going to university where she studied English. And then he says, "Oh, I also love Emily Dickinson." Whereupon Lester recites the whole of the Emily Dickinson poem, which the Woody character couldn't even do. So there's this like an illusion that, oh, I'm actually better than him and I'm more cultured and everything, but that breaks down almost immediately and constantly when he's talking to Lester.
Yeah, like also when he meets Hailey in that in one of the last scenes, he says to her like I cannot believe you. We used to make fun of this guy. Like it's not we used to make fun of this guy. It's he. Like as we see throughout the film, who used to make fun of this guy. So it's almost like he has these delusions in his mind, like that Hell is supposed to be with him, and the way he kind of like twists things around his needs. Of course, he's like relatively more benign than other Woody Allen characters, and also to refer to that documentary thing, he says like Ruslan mentioned, he makes these documentaries on these very extreme subjects, and we also get to know that before making documentaries, he was involved in this in a very functionary job where he used to cut footages of the same subjects. Like he was saying that people from the war or something like that, like he used to cut footages or something like that. And his wife Wendy, and she says she says, I wish you would go back to your old job. She says this, and the way she says it, it comes across somewhat genuine. Like she wishes she would go back to this job, which is a more functionary job, but at the same time, it seems that he was probably more responsible back then versus he's right now when he has started doing all this creative work for whatever reason. And also the fact that he sends this Hailey a letter, like he says I had sent you this letter I plagiarized from James Joyce, and that's why there are all these references from Dublin. That was a very odd comment to me, like why would he return references from Dubliners? So this was the fact that he also used to do this job where he used to cut these newsreels on extreme subjects, and the fact that his documentary subject matters are also the same. It's almost like he's plagiarizing from this material that he is already available to him.
Also, the James Joyce reference, like in literary history, it's fairly well known that James Joyce's letters are like full of "please fart on me" and "I want to sniff your feet." He was a real dirty character. So the fact that he says I copied it from James Joyce, knowing that James Joyce is not known for like these lovely love letters, is again an undercutting of his self-delusion.
And also one last thing, I rewatched this recently with somebody, and both of us just came away thinking like there's also something very discomforting about his relationship with his niece. He's constantly like taking her to these movies. I don't know if he's like pulling her out of school or whatever, but I think the more important thing is that he's confiding all this stuff in her that is very kind of inappropriate. And it's almost as if this is the type that wants approval from children.
I'm completely in love with Hallie, and Lester is starting to make his move. I can see it. And he wants her just for conquest, I can tell. It's so shallow, and I'm crazy about her. And how can I compete with the guy? Because he's rich, and he's famous, he's successful.
Oh, come on, he's no competition for you.
God bless you for saying that, sweetheart, really. But you'll find as you go through life that great depth and smoldering sensuality does not always win, I'm sorry to say.
So even though his wife seems to be very cold and has other problems and is not able, we know that she's a very flawed character because she's not able to sufficiently see through Lester. Now, yes, there's little elements about Lester, like you mentioned, that make him a little bit better than you first think, such as the fact that he probably is a bit more cultured than is assumed. But it's just that he also just wants to make money, so he's killing that part of himself, and he's only tapping the more cultured side when he wants to get something out of somebody like Hailey or whatever, because he also has that aspect to himself as well. But when it comes to Clifford, right, we have everything that you mentioned, and we understand why his wife maybe might want to stop sleeping with him, right? We understand why he's kind of become an undesirable character in many ways. And so, and I guess adding to this, what do you guys think of Hailey, right? The Mia Farrow character, because I actually put her in a similar category in some ways to Clifford, right? She's not like as irresponsible. She doesn't necessarily have all of his pretenses, but she also tries to be constructive, right? With this thing that she wants to produce, it's like, oh, I want to do an episode on each, like on like I forget how many it's supposed to be, but like on checkup stories, right? So she would do an episode for like whatever allotment of checkup stories in her mind, which obviously it's better than whatever Lester is doing, and it's probably better than what the Woody Allen character is doing. But at the same time, even though they seem to have similarities, right? They have, it seems like, similar interests. They're similar in the sense that there seems to be a kind of emptiness to the both of them. And I think this mostly comes out in Hailey when she gets with Lester. Now, you understand why she does so, right? He is successful and he's like slowly trying to like break her down, send her roses, and then they eventually meet in the UK and there's probably like a romantic element. They're kind of maybe from the beginning. You even get the sense that early on when she's kind of dismissing what seems like in a cutting way some of Lester's advances, she's also kind of being playful about it, right? She's not so super firm on it, right? She's leaving him open as a possibility. And this is despite the fact that she knows deep down that Lester is a piece of shit, right? There's no way, for example, that Woody Allen has not told her at some point in the movie, even though we don't see it, obviously, he must have told her at some point, like, hey, like, you won't believe what I got. I got this footage of Lester in this dark corner talking to one of his actresses and promising her a career if she has sex with him. Right. So there's no way that he didn't let this kind of detail slip to Hailey, right? Because he wants to win her over and to paint him as a creep. And he is a creep. And nonetheless, despite all this stuff, like she's willing to look past that because he's going to help her attain the status that she feels that she's entitled to, in the same way that the Woody character.
Right, like with Mia character, I saw that like she actually wants to be friends with Lester. Oh, sorry, with the Cliff character because they have so much commonalities. But the kind of energy I got from her, like she wants to be his friend, like despite his advances, she keeps coming back to him. Also, the fact that she definitely has a type when it comes to her partner, because we get to know her that her ex-husband was also handsome, successful person because he was also an architect and he was also handsome. So this is the sort of type
and cheating on her, right? And cheating on her, just like this guy, Lester.
Exactly.
Lester will probably cheat on her as well, So she's going to that type, yeah.
But yeah, like compared to the Cliff character, like she does have some sense of intellect and as well as sense of professionalism. Like she knows she wants to get ahead. Like even though like we can see her, like she can probably see that all these scummy qualities in Lester, but she's willing to overlook them because she knows that this is how she will get ahead in a way. Like she's a social climber in that sense. Also, that coming back to the Lester though, like one thing that I also noticed is that when I was watching it is that how like he has these models hanging around him, like we see him again and again, and it just like reminded me of this parallel like between Judah and Lester, the way these both people are very successful, both are double-faced, and both are very apathetic. Like we in one of the scenes we see Lester, like he's coming through this, like in the footages of Cliff, we see that like somebody has cancer in his office and he's like and he's about to fire him. He doesn't give it, he'll send him flowers, but he's going to fire him. So I got that sense of apathy on the Lester, the way it is with the Judah. So it's like there's this implication that there is no reason for us to assume that the things won't escalate the same way for Lester, the way it escalated for Judah. Like there's probably this chance that Lester will in the future likely get this similar situation, because towards the end, when Judah and the Cliff character get together, Judah tells him, I have this story of a very successful man. And then scene cuts to Lester as he's walking around this party. So I thought that this was very interesting implication that we get on the other side of the film.
Well, I guess on an interpersonal level, maybe there's some very, very young men watching this. If a woman tells you, like, like I'm sorry, but like I'm just not over my previous relationship, One thing that I've noticed is even if that's true, right, and she might have absolutely felt it that way, she's not lying, right, by stating that. But at the same time, it is true that if the right thing comes along, you will be willing to look past whatever issues that you have, interpersonally leading up to the relationship, both for men and women, right? This is a phenomenon that is just true across the board. What do you think
Right.
of that angle? The fact that maybe she was just waiting for the right person to come along, and maybe like stringing Clifford along a little bit, because she probably does like some of that
Yeah.
attention, and she likes some of that intellectual stimulation. What do you think of that angle?
I'm reminded of the wedding ring she keeps on. She sort of rebuffs Cliff's advances, but also not at all when he goes in for like the second kiss. She's feeling the situation out, and she will choose the one that she gets most benefit out of.
Everyone is doing some kind of, at least a misdemeanor in the film, so maybe that's one of them. So there is an iconic scene in the film between Judah and Jack when Judah's just wondering, okay, what am I supposed to do about my mistress? She's not listening to reason. We need to do something about this. And he calls up his underworld brother, who's involved in all kinds of nefarious activities, to sort of confide in him, tell him the situation. And you could tell that it's not him confiding emotionally because he just needs an empathetic ear. He is confiding in him because he wants some kind of response, right? He's fishing for some kind of comment that he could sort of say, you know what, I didn't put this thought into my own mind, right? It was my brother Jack, my no good, murderous, thieving, whatever, a black sheep of the family brother that I always come to for favors, and he's putting this idea in my head, the germs of murder into my head, and I didn't have anything to do with this. What do you guys think of this interaction between the two of them and the kind of very slow unraveling of what's really on Judah's mind, despite the fact that he's trying to suppress this even from himself?
Yeah, like even from the start, like the way the whole interaction takes place, like one can tell, like this is actually what Judah wants to do, but it's just his way of deflecting the blame from himself, because he is probably someone, like we earlier get this dialogue that he never likes to get his hand dirty, or even never played the hardball, which was interesting image to me, because these images also kind of like gave me this idea of this what should I say, like this idea of like something that goes back to the less privileged background, the hard ball, and the never likes to get his hand dirty and everything. So yeah, he's in a sense like he just wants, like he has already decided that this is the solution, that he has to get rid of this woman because there is no other way around it. But it's just his part of his phoniness and cowardness, especially the phoniness, that he just doesn't want to admit this, that he wants to get it done. And also the fact that he wants to get it done, and also the fact that he is also like, he has this strange dynamics with his brother, like he wants to at the same time maintain this image with his brother, like I am this person who values honor, like you are from this other world, I am from this different world, and and see that how I'm different from you, because his brother says when he comes to meet him that, oh, why did you have to stoop to call me? So which was very interesting comment, because he probably ignores his brother when he only uses him, like it's sort of like not a proper relationship between them. So he probably uses in that way, because earlier in the scene, after this interaction takes place between these two, and Judah is sitting, like when the Dolores gets murdered, and Judah is sitting with these people, like his daughter comes to him, and like, and she says to him, the Ben is the Ben is calling. It's Ben on the phone, she says to him, and he's like, Ben, like he's confused, like he doesn't even remember who Ben is, like he so quickly forgets him. So it's just that to me that like it also had that sibling dynamics, and the way he's so aloof from everything.
Yeah, what I noticed in that scene was like the language he used when he talked about Dolores is that she was killing him, apparently. And then when they're talking about what they should do with Dolores, it's all like cloaked language, but like we need to reason with her. You know, not straightforward. Like on the level of the language, he's trying there already to shift the blame to somebody else, and he would be like the victim, supposedly.
Yeah, and also to get back to the character of Dolores, like one thing I noticed, like I rewatched this time, that like there's this sense that this is not the first time that's happened to the Dolores, because when she's arguing with Judah, she says to him, "I will not let this happen to me this time." And later there's this scene in the airplane, and we see that like she and Judah, when they meet for the first time, but we do but and she's speaking to Judah like, "Hi, incidentally, my name is Dolores," but we do not see who's sitting at the chair at all. Like it's like there could be very well another man. So it's almost like she's not so much raging against Judah. It's almost like she's raging against her own fate. Like, "I will not let this happen to me this time." And she's like, so it kind of like gives this existential undercurrent to her character.
All right, so the timer went off, which means the public show closes right here. But in the bonus show, we actually have so many other topics that we got to talk about. So first of all, we have to, in more depth, discuss the Dolores character. I want to talk about Louis Levy, the Jewish philosopher slash professor in the film, and his kind of function, because I'm surprised that in my original review, I didn't notice some things about his utterances that I think are quite relevant to get into. We should talk about maybe a bit more of Woody as an artist. There's just a ton of stuff, and plus, of course, since it's a bonus show, they do tend to get wild. Shirts tend to come off. A lot of things that will not ever be publicized. They're going to be paywalled. So if you want to get that, that is patreon.com/automachination, and the private show, very private show, it starts now.